Ethan, you all right?
Yeah, not too bad. You know, yeah, we did those last two videos on the economy. You know what? Forgot about interview techniques.
You
I
sure
mean,
did.
you apply for a job. What happens next? I mean, how is it
Exactly.
you're going to get to the last two or last three? You know, I mean, there's certain finesse to getting to the last three, but there are important stages that you need to go through to even get shortlisted. And we haven't
Totally
even
agree.
discussed that, have we?
No, 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 no. I mean, I'd be interested in hearing your experience of how you've applied for jobs. What's caught your attention? What made you think, yeah, I can potentially do this job, and how you went about applying for it? Because I've been in scenarios before in the past where I've seen jobs, thought, yeah, I'd really like this, and I've kind of walked away from them thinking, you know what, I've only got 60 or 70% worth of experience, but I haven't got what, X, Y, Z that they're looking for. And as I've gotten older, I've come to realize that most of the time, 60 or 70% experience is good enough. What you want to do is read the job specification and tailor your responses, or adapt your CV in a way that brings those particular strengths out, in terms of the job specification or the person specification they're looking for.
Well,
Well, in a minute, I've got experience sort of sales roles that I've applied for. And sales techniques are quite universal, so you can apply them no matter what product it is you're selling, whether it's hardware, whether it's software, etc.
it's all people driven, so it's about understanding
Yeah,
people
definitely, definitely,
and
yeah, yeah.
but I mean, when you apply for jobs that you see on jobs boards, um, there has been a dramatic change in the way you actually go about the process of being shortlisted. I mean, traditionally, it was a case of put in your CV, show your experience, and then hope that would be enough. But you have to take it these days that most companies farm out their recruiting process to agencies, and you have to have the mindset now that the agencies are quite lazy in the way that they actually do their vetting process. They want you to do all the work for them. So you have to be prepared to make sure that you've crossed all the I's and well and dotted the T's, whatever it is, um, to ensure that you actually have um, any kind of hope of being seen. Because if it's the another very important issue that I only heard about recently since this COVID situation has happened, is that online CVs with agencies actually go through a computer vetting process, and they're
Yeah,
looking for keywords
yeah,
and sentences
yeah,
that match with their criteria.
yeah.
Otherwise, your CV ends up in the bin,
For
and it never
specific
actually gets seen.
roles, yeah, yeah, for specific roles, I would agree. But I would take a step back and find or research agencies that uh, that are active in the areas that I'm interested in, or the types of work that I'm looking for. Because you get different specialist agencies for science stuff and
It's
what.
true.
So for me, if it's an IT sales job, I'd look for companies that have IT sales and vacancies, or agencies, sorry, and then I'll send them. Well, what I would do is I'll tend to ring them first, find out the right person to speak to within that agency, have a quick chat with them. What kind of roles they've got, what kind of CVs they're looking for, experience they're looking for, etc. Then I'll send it over. Then I'd follow it up a few days later, and then I'd ask to go in there. And normally they'd call you in for an interview, as agencies do, so they can get a good measure of the person you are, and then they can kind of, figure out what kind of fit you're going to be for their various clients, or what other roles that they can potentially offer you. So that's how I would personally deal with agencies.
Mm.
I don't know, different experiences. Problem is with these job boards like Monster, etc. A lot of them are for particular roles, and the cynic in me sometimes says agencies create these perfect, great-looking roles, so that when people are searching through, they think, oh, this is awesome. That way, you'd apply for it. They may not even have the role. I don't know if this is, so it's
Yes, I was just thinking that
something
myself.
that they, I might be totally wrong on this, but I get that feeling sometimes. They're just trying to get CVs in and candidates registered, because obviously the
Well,
more people have got registered,
I
the
mean,
more
I
they.
mean, it certainly has been. It has been in the press, certainly in the last 5 or 6 years. Um, it has come to light the fact that a great deal of the roles that are being advertised are 4 to 6 months out of date, and it is
Hmm.
about agencies um, bringing in suitable candidates that they can pitch to their clients. Um,
Exactly. And my experience is from the good old days, pre lockdown. So when things were normal. Nowadays, obviously, there's a lot of people that are looking for jobs. So there's a tremendous amount of competition that you're going to be against from the get go. So if you see a decent job, there's bound to be hundreds, if not thousands, of other people applying for it.
so the important thing now, regardless of that information, if you're unemployed, and you're on universal credit or you're on job seekers allowance, there are certain criterias, and you have a role to fulfil for them if you're going to get your payments while you're waiting for your new job. As a lot of
Or even
people,
applying applications.
yes, as the fact that a lot of people have already been made redundant, or they furloughed and there's possibly going to be no job at the end of it. So you've got to be prepared. We've had a whole year to think about this situation. We know that we know that there are big changes coming. For us, we grew up seeing the sort of the end of industry, and a lot of people out of work. And of course, depending on where you were in the country, would change how severe that problem was, which resulted in people um, moving out of pit towns into larger cities to find any kind of work. Now, we hope that that won't happen this time, but it's about being prepared for that. And if you
Mm.
see a role that kind of matches your kind of, uh, your history in the workplace, well, you want to be the best person out there for that role. You want that possibility of shining and showing that this person is in the top three.
Okay, well, for me, I think there's two ways of doing it. I tended to ignore the big um, uh, job sites such as Monster, Indeed, etc. Okay, because of what we mentioned earlier, because sometimes, most of the times, I just got this feeling that the jobs weren't live jobs or proper jobs that were available. It's just more in terms of getting people in and registered with them. Now, what I would personally do is research job agencies locally. You can do that easily on the internet. All right, and you'll find dozens of them. I would pick out, like I keep saying, the 80-20 rule. I'd probably pick out between 5 to 10 of these agencies that kind of fit the criteria that I'm looking for and the types of jobs that I'm looking for. If it's, for example, warehouse jobs, you want to pick specific agencies for those kind of jobs. If it's sales jobs, retail jobs, science jobs, whatever job it is, management roles, etc., you want to pick the most appropriate agencies. Make a list of them. Then I would initially call them, get hold of the name of the person to speak to that deals with the types of jobs that I'm looking for. There may be one, there may be several, but get their details, get their names, get their phone numbers. Once I've spoken to them, told them what kind of experience I have, you've had a conversation, you've developed a relationship. At that point, I would agree to send them my CV. Obviously, I'd keep a note of who I've sent it to and when I've sent it to, and I would then tell them, is it okay if I give you a call back in a couple of days? Is that convenient? And then we can kind of catch up, see what kind of roles are out there. You're kind of taking that little bit of an extra step to push yourself forward ahead of everybody else, if that makes sense. Let's say there's a queue of 1,000 people and they're getting dozens and dozens of CVs every single day. You've just pushed yourself to the front of that queue because you've taken some extra action yourself. Most people are just going to send a CV in and hope for the best. You can't do that in this day and age. So
No,
that's the first thing I would do.
although I do have one disagreement with that, is that obviously, as I said, that there's requirements for your JSA. You still have to apply for those roles.
Keep going. I'm just going to mute for
Yeah.
a moment. Some background noise.
You still have to apply for those roles because there is a certain quota. They say a minimum of 25 a week. I found that they want more like 50 to 100. So still apply for the roles on the big job sites, but just keep in mind that your focus is likely to be best placed with those roles that you go out of your way to cold contact.
I'd agree with you, but then I disagree with you as well. You've got to meet that quota. But if you're upfront with your, are they advisors? I don't know what they're called. Handlers,
Work
advisors,
coaches.
work coaches. Um, Hold on a moment. Right. So, I've had
I've lost you just for a moment there. Hopefully you'll come back on.
my experience, and this is what I'm going to focus on. The reason I did that is because I remember sitting and
Sorry,
waiting.
just one thing there. I lost you for a bit. You actually froze. So if you rewind a little and just recap over what you were saying, I've lost you.
Uh,
Give me a few words
yeah,
back.
yeah, okay. I mean, my main thing is focus. This is what you've got to do. This is the key word at the moment, focus. So you know what your skill sets are. You know what your experiences are. I think when you go to the job centre, and I was saying my one experience of it is, I remember the first time I went there. I sat there waiting to see somebody, and ahead of me was a young chap, and the conversation went along the lines of, "Oh, have you applied for jobs this week?" "Yes, I have." "How many have you applied for?" "Oh, I've applied for 10." "What kind of jobs have you applied for?" "I've sent some CVs away to some hairdressers." And then the conversation died. And then I heard the lady say back to the person that she was talking to, "Have you got experience as a hairdresser?" And he's like, "No." "Then why did you apply at hairdressers?" And he didn't quite have any response for that. And I kind of sat there listening. I wasn't eavesdropping, I was just overhearing the conversation. I thought, okay, that's fine. So by the time it was my turn, I sat down with her and said, "This is what I've done. This is my experience. This is what I'm going to do." So you won't expect me to send 30, 40, 50 emails off, because I'm only going to be able to focus on these particular types of jobs. And there aren't that many for me to, there aren't 40 or 50 a week for me to be able to send CVs to. So they appreciated that. I never did my quota because she knew I was actively searching for work that I had experience of. And what that did, it just allowed me to focus my efforts on maximizing my chances of getting a job. I wasn't going to send a job to be a van driver, for example, because I've not done anything like that. Forklift driver. I've never driven a forklift.
Although
You know,
you don't need a specific license to drive a van. You just
yeah,
have
or work in a
a
warehouse. So
a good clean record on your driving license is helpful for
so
that. So it's a
definitely,
job that's open to a lot of people.
yeah. And I focused in on only doing the things that would maximize my opportunities for getting a job. Having said that, I know we alluded to this earlier. There were some roles that I looked at, thought, "Oh, this looks good. It's good money. It's in the right area. I could actually do this." And as I'm reading through the specification, it's like, "Oh, I haven't got this particular type of experience they're looking for." Initially, I was disheartened, but then I thought, you know what? Here's a sales role, and it's selling a specialist type of business management software. I've got no experience of that business management software. But if you take a step back, you kind of think, well, I know the sales process because I've been doing it for decades. I know how it works, what steps you take, who you need to talk to, how to build rapport. how to do research on your particular sector, how to, just to find out who the decision makers are. So I could demonstrate all that experience, and the software, I pushed it to one side. It's just a product, okay? It's just something that I'm going to sell. But hey, guess what? I can learn that software. You can go on the website and you could probably pick up about 40 or 50% of what you need to know in terms of putting the right keywords in to the application. But rather than sending that through an agency, this is me contacting companies direct. If I found an IT company selling software, I'm thinking, okay, this is a really good job. I would really like to do this. So this took me away from agencies. Does that make sense? Because I'm now,
Yeah.
I've sent my CVs off to agencies. I've done that bit. I've found job roles, read the spec, I've applied for those, and now I'm actually contacting companies. Right. So this is step three. This is a third thing that I did. And again, like I said, what you're trying to do is you're trying to push in front of the queue. If you've got thousands of CVs going into agencies, if you took the steps that I mentioned earlier, pick up the phone, speak to them, speak to the right person, send them your CV, agree to call them back in 2 or 3 days. That way, you're, at the forefront of in their mind. Second thing it'll do, it will make them think, okay, this person is really keen, he's motivated to do this. They're automatically going to try and push you forward to their companies that they've got on their books. Does that make sense? So they're the
Yes.
3 steps I would take. Obviously, read on these job sites, etc. If you want to. I personally wouldn't, but that's option one. You've got your agencies, option two, and then approaching companies direct.
Although so certainly that covers for approaching companies directly. But what if you're in a more specialist field and your best port of call is agencies? You're looking online, at
Yeah,
specifically directly at agencies or through jobs boards. Um, there's obviously a new dynamic, and as we were saying, about agencies being quite lazy and they want you to do the work for them. Plus the fact that when they use a computer to look for keywords and sentences, and if they don't see that, then they'll just throw your CV in the bin. So, step one, you've looked at the job online, you've seen the key aspects of it. The next thing to do is investigate the role, and that there will be hopefully one maybe two sheets, separate attachments in there. Investigate the role and the specification role, the person specification. So you want to
all the
know
keywords.
the ins and outs of that particular role, and what they require from the person applying for the role, so that you can then put that in the application. Because the first thing that you do is you send off your CV, you click it away, and then it takes you through to the company's website, and they'll want you to fill out an application. And this is where the person specification, the role specification comes in, because unless you tailor it using that correct language that they want, that's in their requirements, that's where you don't get anywhere. So you've done that.
Totally agree. Yeah,
You've cross-referenced it with your
yeah.
experience and qualifications. Bang, that's your foot in the door. You
Right
are up against
keywords.
an awful
Yeah,
lot of people. Stage two is research the company, because if you're going to get if you get offered an interview, you're going to want to know a little bit about the history of the company, what their interests are, what services they're involved with,
culture.
even their culture, their share price,
Yeah,
and any positive media coverage that you've had. You don't want to talk about any negative coverage, because that's
totally.
a bad
Yeah,
idea, certainly.
yeah. I mean, it's a given that you would do the background research on the company.
And of course, the next thing, of course, is you're in the interview. They're going to ask you, well, what do you know about the company? So once you've done that research, you can say, well, I know this, and 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 I know that about the company, and it shows an interest in the company as well as the role, that you actually want to be there. And of course, the next,
Totally. And
go on, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, if you're reading the job specification and you're doing your background research on the company, it will give you a good set of questions to ask when you're at the interview as well.
Yes,
So you don't want to just ask about the role. You want to show them a little bit more of your breadth of knowledge about them as a business, and it'll just demonstrate that you've taken an interest not only just in the role, because that's not what you're interested in. You've done a little bit of background research into the company as well. Oh, I know it's been founded this long. I know it's quite well received, or highly rated in this particular sector, whatever the sector is. And you just want to figure out where they stand in their industry, in terms of reputation, etc. And you want to make sure that you tell them this if you can, if need be.
true. Although then there comes the interview questions, and there are 3 to 5 basic questions they will always ask, and there may be, people may have some reservations about researching these, but the truth is, they will always ask, why do you want this job? You know, why do you think you're the right person for the job? And having a clear answer, um, that that you can run through in your mind, that in your mind, that they don't think that you're just waffling or coming off of the top of your head, also gives a certain amount of depth, because you've thought about why do I want to work for this company? Why do I think I can make a difference here? And your answer to that is another third of the way through the interview process. But then of course, I think a mistake that people certainly make is that they go in there fired up with their questions, and that's all they could do. Right, I'm ready to answer questions about the job and about me. But they may also use another technique, and that is just a little bit of light conversation, because they want to determine, what's he like socially, what's he going to be like in the office. Is he going to be easy to talk to, get on with? It's another more minor aspect of the interview process that may have an impact. And if you're all worked up and robotic, you can certainly lose points. You know,
There's something to be said for interview nerves, and I guess they'll always build that in as well and make some allowance for it, which I agree. So, yeah, I mean, the main thing is getting your foot in the door. Okay, that's your main thing, and designing your research. I guess I would look at it, make it like a job essentially. How would I approach this in terms of what do I need to do? What steps do I need to do to get myself employed? So that is something that you're doing. And my experience is only from sales. When I went in there, the interview process was similar to the sales process. See, when you go in to see a new client, you're essentially, maybe it's a brand new client, you've spoken to them on the phone, you've sent them some emails, you've had a couple of conversations, you've gone into a meeting, so it's the first time you're seeing each other and meeting each other. And that's how I would approach the interview as well. And I would go through it, and sales is quite conversational. You're asking leading questions, if you like. So I would do the same in the interview. Okay, how's this job come about? Are you kind of expanding because your sales have gone up and you need more people to cope with the extra work? That's the way I would approach it. And that's potentially a question I would ask going along. I would try and lead the thing rather than sitting back and letting them ask me questions. I'm a little bit more reactive rather than being proactive, rather than sitting there saying, okay, hello, can you tell us a bit about yourself? And you answer the question, why do you want to leave? Because that's not building a rapport with anybody. And sales is about building rapport with people. People buy from people, so they've got to know that this is an individual that I like and I trust.
although there is something to be said about the research of the company, about your interview questions, about what sort of things that they're going to ask you. Put all this together, write it down, put it in a notebook, and then take that information into the interview with you, because they won't mind you having
Yeah.
a pad and paper in there, because you can't always remember everything. So if you can refer back to your notes, can at least show them, well, actually, I've done the
You've done your
hard work,
preparation.
and I'm ready
Yeah, I
for
mean,
the interview.
I totally agree with you there, totally agree. But taking a step back, if you haven't been for an interview for a while, there's a couple of things to do here. Once you start sending your CV out and contacting people and agencies, etc., everyone that invites you in for an interview or in for a chat, go. Don't turn anyone down. I used to even go for jobs that I thought, you know what, I'm not interested in this job. Rather than thinking, nah, I don't want to go to it, I would still go. Because the more you do, the more experience you build up. You get a kind of a knowledge base of the types of questions they're going to ask. You kind of mentally preparing yourself and you're getting better with each one. So even if you get offered a job that you don't really want, you can say, look, thank you, I'm not interested in it. But I would still go to the interviews whilst I waited to get invited to an interview for the job that I really wanted.
Although there
But
is
I've already done 2 or 3 interviews before that
Mhm.
in other roles. So I might be waiting for a response back, or I might genuinely not be interested in doing that particular job. But hey, I've been to the interview. So when I get invited in for an interview for the job that I really want, I'm proper prepared because I've got a body of experience behind me that I can then use to answer the questions. And you get a good feel of what's going on in terms of how the process works, interview process works.
Well, there is also the pre-interview prep we've been talking about. Is having someone that you can talk to,
Yep,
that can fire questions off at you, and you can fire ideas at, about, and then see how they feel, and get their opinion on what to do next. But certainly the interview technique itself, just going through potential interview questions, can loosen you up and make you more ready for when you actually go to that interview.
totally. And if nobody calls you in for an interview, then you can get in touch with the agency and say, can you help me prepare? Do some mock interviews, or potentially, if you're on the dole, is there any help available under the JSA? Perhaps you can approach
They
the
do have
person that,
those sort of things in English, mathematics, and interview techniques, and there are sector-based learning academies, though the name has changed now, for various roles that are supposed to get you into roles more easily. What I personally, in my experience, have found that a number of these roles make no difference. You go for the interview, you go for the training, and it should guarantee you an interview, and you end up still going through the process. So
yeah, I mean, that I have no experience over, but I think if you haven't done an interview for some time, it, it's worthwhile going because I guess you'll be able to develop some kind of framework of how the whole process is going to work. So you've got a little bit of preparation. So when you do get invited for an interview with a proper company, you kind of do have some background information on how to approach it. So I think it's still worth doing. It might be, your experience might be pointless, but I still think it's worth doing. I'm of the opinion that go for everything you can. Don't turn anything down until the moment you've been offered your dream job. Keep going. So yeah, do some practicing. I totally agree with you there. If you've not been for an interview for quite some time, get practicing.
well, I certainly agree with that. There's always time for interview prep, though there are certain things that are important to know for the night before, and certainly for the day of the interview itself. What one is, I wouldn't, I would stop practicing on the night before, and then review your notes. You've got your notes that you're going to bring with you, and review those um, just before the interview, or when you get up. Give yourself that little bit of time to relax and process the information that you've been taking in. Give your mind a rest the night before.
Yeah,
Uh,
I agree.
you do not want to be overly worked up when that interview, because it can have a very negative effect if you're stressed. And of course, um, I mean, what one that you've actually said to me before that I haven't always taken advantage of is to actually do a dry run to the premises where the interview is going to be, so that you are aware of traffic and
How to get
everything
there.
else and how
Yeah.
to get there.
Yeah,
Um,
don't leave anything to the last minute.
but also being at the interview 15 to 20 minutes early can make an awful lot of difference to you being ready for that interview. You know, you get in, you announce yourself, get your badge, if that's the case. You
Sign in.
go to the toilet and then sit down and have a look over a few of your notes. You know, your interview may start at 9 o'clock or 9:30 in the morning, but chances are that the previous person that's in that interview is going to overrun. So you may be waiting in a further 10, 15 minutes anyway. But it's all good time to
Yeah, yeah,
sit down and just read through your notes and
yeah,
just
yeah.
make sure that you're prepped and ready to go. And take a deep breath until when they call, then they call you and you go in.
Yeah, you're going to get nervous, which is standard. Everybody gets nervous. But yeah, I mean, just one thing that I would touch on, taking a couple of steps back. Once you start this process of applying for jobs, you've made your list, you've shortlisted the types of companies that you want to work with and what particular types of jobs that you want to apply for. Once you've done that, I mean, I would just start getting into the entire mode of, right, I'm ready to get a job. So get your clothes ready. I tend to get stuff ready well in advance. Go and drop your suit off or jacket off and trousers and shirt, whatnot, to the dry cleaners if you want to make a good impression, or just get everything washed, cleaned, ironed, ready, put it aside, polish your shoes. So that's over and done with. It's ready for you to grab when you need it to be. Don't leave that to the last minute. So you get an interview invite and then you think, damn, it's a couple of days away. And now I need to get some clean clothes or a suit sorted. Get all that done. So it's put aside and ready. Um, that's the thing. And then obviously I totally agree. Turn up a bit early. So a job that I wanted once, I was had an interview. It was during lunchtime, so it, I didn't know how to get there. So rather than relying on sat nav and a lot of stress, I thought, you know what, let's go the night before, go to the office where I'm working from, and from there drive to the offices where my interview is. Are you there?
Yes, I'm still here. Sorry. If it's gone off, don't worry about it. Continue.
Okay, so I did that dry run. So the next day, when I needed to get to the interview location, I knew exactly what to do. I knew exactly how to get there, exactly where to park. Strangely enough, I even spoke to a security guard who was there in the evening. He was kind of, I said, "Oh, I'm going to be here tomorrow for an interview," and he goes, "Oh yeah, I'll be on the shift then." So I knew exactly what to do the night before. I'm not saying necessarily leave it the night before, just do it a couple of days in advance, but plan that in if need be. If you're going to catch a bus, if you're going to get a taxi, get it all planned and scheduled in, so you're not panicking on the day. So you kind of know, all right, I need to catch a bus. This is a time I need to leave to make sure that I get into town, and then I've got some walking to do to get to the office. And then, I want to still make sure that I'm there 15 minutes early, because the thing you don't want to do is turn up late, because, you're going to be nervous, you're going to be flustered, you're on the back foot, and you don't want to start on that basis. So get there nice and early, get yourself checked in, and just, like I said, use the loo if you need to. You've then got a bit of time to catch your breath, go over your notes once or twice, and that's it. You can sit back and wait for them to call you in.
Well, I mean, of course, there are a few important techniques that you've kind of actually already mentioned that have gone to the wayside. Some important etiquette points that have gone to the wayside, certainly in the last 10 to 15 years, about the way you dress for a role, for an interview, and it's about appropriate dress and about dressing properly. Now, you know, um, there seems to be a new culture of turning up, however you really wish to, unless of course it's a really high powered or high paying job, which you would certainly expect to wear a suit to that role. But I have seen certainly people in the last 10 years are turning up for roles of quite high level responsibility, and they are just underdressed. I mean, they even turn up in jean trousers and a shirt, and they think that this is appropriate. You know,
Did they get those jobs?
well, who knows? Who knows? But
But
you
yeah, I
know,
mean, you've got to approach it, because ultimately what you're doing is you're showcasing yourself and you want to stand out from other candidates. And if you can dress smartly and be professionally presented, that's going to put you head and shoulders above everyone else.
Well, so for a man, clean shaven, tidy hair, combed or groomed, whether you use wax or gel, as long as your hair must be tidy for when you go for that interview. Certainly, um, dressing appropriate, as I said, shirt and tie, trousers, clean shoes, and for a woman, I mean that there is no standard dress code, but dressing smartly and appropriately um, is important. I mean that um, there are of course other techniques like making regular eye contact. You don't want to be um, staring at your interviewers because it's quite off-putting, to be honest, and it can damage the flow of the interview when people are not completely comfortable. And then there are other important things like not mumbling or slurring your words. Being clear with your statements and answer, and then the way that you answer them, being clear and concise. But also um, waffle is a terrible trap that people can find themselves in. That when they haven't got enough to say, and you find yourself looping, um, and
Yeah,
then
I agree. I agree.
and then this and
I'm
then
going to say
find
something.
yourself talking about rubbish.
I'm going to say something strange here. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy the process. Take the stress off yourself.
Yes.
'Cause there's two ways you can look at it. You can look at the job and you think, "Damn, I really want this job. The money's good. It's just exactly what I want in life or need in life." So you become really, really focused on that, and then you kind of forget the little things. So I tended to go in there thinking, what, I'm just going to go in there, do my best. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. That's when you start, I guess, waffling and failing because you're trying so hard to say the right things, make the right impression that you end up forcing, coming across as forced and unnatural. So just relax. They're human beings at the end of the day as well. They're probably nervous. And yeah, I mean, some of the best interviews, the ones that I've gone in with that mindset, you know what, I know I'm nervous, but I'm just going to go in there and enjoy myself. It's a strange thing to say, but
No, no, it certainly isn't. No,
you're
no,
taking the pressure. It's a way of
I,
relieving pressure.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that, because the thing is, right, is just that if you did the work, you did the research, and you followed the steps, and you got into that interview, and you had your answers, right, and you just go with the flow, answer the questions, take your time. I mean, there's nothing wrong in having to think about an answer to a question that they put for you before you, or saying, look, I need to think about that. Can we come back to that question? There's nothing wrong in doing those things. What's important is that you did that work, and when you say enjoying the process, is just if you have done that work, then don't worry about it. And the less you
Yeah,
worry,
I agree.
the better you're going to come across. Because if you don't get that job, and you did everything you could, then don't worry. Then there's nothing more that you could have done. I mean, and sitting up afterwards, spending days thinking, what could I have done better? You know, it isn't a just wallowing in it. It isn't going to be the best use of your time.
I
What you
agree.
can do is just ask for some feedback, and then
Exactly.
have
It's
a
what I was
start.
going to say. Yeah, totally agree. And the other thing is, this is the reason I say go to as many interviews as you can. Even if you get invited for jobs that you know that you're not going to take,
Yeah.
go for the interview. Just go, because that's kind of building up your experience and it's opening you up to lots of different ways of thinking. So when you get that ideal interview for the ideal job, you've kind of got a lot of experience already because you've done several interviews before with other companies. So totally agree with you there. Um, And feedback, that's important, because going back to sales, at the end of it, I would actually say to them, okay, what do you think? Have I got an opportunity to get this job? Because that's what you would do in sales, right? I've spoken to you, given you the prices, answered your questions. I think we're a good fit. I think we're a good fit. Over to you. What are the chances of me getting this business? Because it does two things. You're demonstrating that you're willing to close the business. If they then bring up an objection at that point, if they say to you, "Well, you know what, you didn't answer this question," you've still got a chance of fixing that before you walk out,
I agree.
rather than come up a few days later and saying, "How did I do? Blah blah blah. Oh, you didn't answer this question properly." So it's always worth doing, and that it's another step that you can take to ensure you're a little bit ahead of everyone else, because a lot of people won't ask that question at the end because they'll be a little bit shy, or they might not think that it's the right thing to do. But in
Well,
sales, you
yeah.
always ask. You ask for the business, so why not ask that question?
Well,
I did
sorry, go on.
where people were taken aback a little bit, but they really appreciated the fact that I asked.
Well, certainly there will come a point in the interview. Not so much now that they are allow you to ask questions during the interview. More likely, if they do, it will be at the end. So sometimes that they don't want you to ask questions of them. It's a very strange situation. It does happen, but usually you get a chance to ask your question, which can deepen their perception about how much you want the job. And then it also allows you to slip in that last question about if you've got the confidence, have I got the job? Some people feel confident with that, or saying, or you can put in the end, look forward to hearing from you um, over this. But there are two techniques, very important techniques to do with conversation and beginning this interview that we haven't mentioned. One, when you go into that interview, have a firm handshake if it's a man, and also a firm handshake at the end of the interview. The thing's going a little bit, so just bear with me if the picture goes. So you've got your firm handshake. If it's a woman, obviously be a bit more gentle, but make eye contact in there when you actually make that motion. Now, oh look, uh, there we go. We've come back now. Um, another important thing, and this one can change the whole perception of the interview. Is it's not uncommon for younger people to make this mistake because they're not confident, and people that are unconfident do make the same error, which is that when they're talking to people, they can be a bit like this, which which shows that you're not confident about the role, but you have to be brave in there and talk, make eye contact, and keep your head at this level when you're talking. It's
Agreed,
it's
agreed,
an error
agreed.
that's made by so often by people because they are a little nervous, and you have to make sure to think that you're not looking into your navel, as it were, or your chest. Um, so you know,
If they lack confidence, and again, goes back to what I've said before, go to as many interviews as you can, because the more you do, the more it will build your confidence.
yeah, yes, I agree. So obviously, be polite, make conversation when they want to, but when they're asking questions, keep it light, uh, if necessary, but keep to the point. Answer the questions properly. Don't mess about um, in the interview. Being too
Yeah, and
serious can
just
have a negative effect, but
yeah,
obviously,
just be positive, and try and answer the questions, and like I said, enjoy it. And if there's any bits in there, like I said, that you're not sure of, obviously don't ignore anything that's on the job spec. Make sure you know what they're looking for. If you're not 100% sure what it is, You'll be able to find the information on their website or online. You'll be able to get yourself enough information on any product, especially from a sales perspective, from the internet, so that you're well prepared in advance. So let's say, for example, you've sold phones, and now you're going to try and sell mouses, whatever it is, or how you
Nice.
just. So what, first thing I would do is just say, okay, this is a mouse. It's got this scroll wheel. It's got two buttons. Costs this much generally. Like, you find out about the product that you're going to be selling. If it's software, just find out who it's aimed at, what user groups, what sectors, what kind of price range. Find out about where this particular company sits. How can I say this? So it's in a sector, you've got companies that sit at the top, middle, bottom. So find out where they are, find out what differentiates their products, software, systems from their competitors. So you can find out a lot of information. Don't overdo it. You don't need to know every detail. You just need to know, okay, you sell operating systems. The company at the top is Microsoft, then it's followed by, for example, Linux or Apple with their software. And then you sit in the middle range, and below that is, Android operating software, or whatever it is. You've got a good company of where they fit in their sector. So little things like that will push you ahead of other people, and you can demonstrate that experience when you go in. And if it's a sales job, this is the approach that I would take to generate new business for you, and take them through it, and boom, no one else is going to be doing that. They're going to be sitting back saying, okay, waiting for you to ask me, right, tell me about yourself.
Well,
What your
you often go on the sales side of things and the procurement, and as for
That's my
me,
experience.
it's the project side of things, and then there's, I have the retail and customer service side,
But isn't the
etc., etc.,
process the same then?
contracts. Um,
Because you're taking them through, right, this is how I would manage a project. This is how I would start. These are the people that I would get involved, because I need their input and I need their buy-in, because without them, it's not gonna succeed. So you've got
well,
your internal people, you've got yourself, you've got your external suppliers, you've got a deadline that you've got to meet, and you've got a bunch of information and milestones that you need to achieve. So it's still a process.
yes. Well, there are different techniques, and you can claim that you use these methods, and you found that you've had the best success with this, and that in these situations that that you would use this. But obviously your technical qualifications and experience will actually speak to that a lot, because obviously
Totally.
you've got Scrum, you've got Prince 2, then you've got things like lean management and things like that. But there are different things, and there are slightly different approaches, and the depth of knowledge that you show can be the technical side, just the actual experience. So for your case, you talk about scenarios specifically to sales, about understanding the product, and about how you deliver that
I
information.
think it's universal. I mean, if it's administration, if I'm doing an admin role, I'll try and understand what that admin role is, and I'll still go through the same process. What's the job specification? And what are they looking for me as an individual? They need me to be organized, methodical, blah, blah, blah. And I would work that into my CV, and I would work that into my interview by giving concrete examples of what I've done before and how I've done it. And perhaps if you can, like for sales, I used to take, like evidence of what I'd done before. So if I said, okay, I've hit my sales targets for 3 months in a row, here's the proof. You've presented them with something, you're demonstrating, or you're showing them that you're demonstrating your abilities effectively. I know
Yeah.
you can't do that in every role, but I think there is a process, like you said, even yours with project management, that you can follow.
Well,
Right.
obviously, um, what I'm saying is that with roles that are more technical based, that have more specific methodology put into, that they may ask you questions about methodology.
Totally, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's the only
They're going to want to
difference.
make sure
I
that
mean, I mean,
you understand.
to that's the only thing I would say that you need to be more ready for. If you're already
Yeah.
in a technical environment, you probably know that anyway.
Yeah, you're gonna
But
have
if
an
you
understanding
haven't, but if you
of it.
haven't applied for a role for a long time, it's just something just to put in your just to put in your shell, like as it were, just as just to keep you up to date. But but the most important thing of all, when you go in there and you give that handshake, is smile. And don't green cut kind of insanely or creepily, but you know, be upbeat. You know,
Yeah, I know what
be
you mean,
natural.
and I know the nerves are there, but once the interview actually gets started, I think once you start talking, the nerves generally tend to start dissipating once you get into the flow of things. It's just a lead up to it, I guess, mainly. Okay, so I think we're pretty much covered.
Yeah, I don't think that. Well, from certainly from our experience, that there's much more that can be that we can say. Obviously,
Ultimately, it's about preparation, and I think
yes.
I said if I was in that position now, I would keep thinking, you know, I keep going on about it, the 80-20 rule. What one more thing can I do to improve my chances of getting an interview, of succeeding in terms of getting my CV in front of the right person? So you're always thinking of something, the old cliche, thinking outside the box. Do something different than everybody else. Get yourself in front of the queue rather than being right at the back waiting your turn. You're never going to be remembered.
Even for sales, um, sites like Indeed um, seem to be having more importance now, certainly in some big companies. And if you have technical training in particular types of sales, which you do in procurement and things like that, relating to sales, there are techniques, there are methodologies that are out there. Um, the way you present yourself on sites, the way you sell yourself on places like Indeed can actually have an impact, and it can change the whole way that you come across for an interview. So people look you up. Oh, he's got this. He's been working here, and I only bring this up because it could take half of the work out of in the interview itself, because they may know so much about you that they may then, and it can happen that they will focus more on scenario and your depth of knowledge than trying to get to know whether you are the right person. So it's just a pointer to remember that obviously the world is changing, and there are things going on all the time. I
Yeah, oh, I had myself on mute. Competition out there is intense. So
indeed.
I'd constantly be thinking, okay, what can I do that's going to make me stand out?
Obviously, you can't drive yourself mad over it.
No,
There's only so
and
much you can do in one time to
the
between
thing is,
you seeing
well,
a job role to you actually making it to interview, as it were.
exactly, and you keep amending it, amending it, amending it. If you're not getting any success, change what you did. Don't do the same again.
True.
Change it a bit and keep tweaking it. And if you can't figure out how to change it, then ask people, get in touch with the agencies that are that are looking for people, recruiting for this particular role, and say to them, okay, what did I do wrong? Can you tell me what you needed? What did your ideal candidate need to look like? You can ask the question, people will be happy to tell you. You can even do that when you're approaching companies cold.
Uh,
When I did this, the easiest thing to do was submit a CV online. It would go to the HR person. I didn't do that because I thought, you know what, this is what everybody else does. Let me ring up and find out who the sales manager is
mm,
would be potentially working for. You know how I did that? It's easy. I didn't just ring reception. Um, I think what I did, I managed to get through to the sales team, and I had a conversation and I explained to them what I was doing, and just said, look, this is why I've called you. I need a bit of background information because I want to apply for this particular role. I can't remember who I spoke to, but it was a very helpful individual who gave me all the information that I needed. So then I was able to tailor my CV, and guess what? I sent it directly to the person who I could potentially be working for, and I got invited in for an interview and was successful getting that job. It was a
Although,
long time ago, mind you, but I wasn't one of the many people that sent it just to HR.
although in contrast to that, if you're going for more specific roles, um, and you're using agencies and companies, um, and you're working with the unemployment agency, they'll say that you can always get feedback. It isn't true. For many years,
From
now,
agencies.
yeah, agencies just don't give out feedback anymore.
You know why? Because they're busy, and I don't think they're people that you can depend on for that unless you've taken the extra step and built a good relationship up with the person that you're sending your CV to, because you've spoken to them several times, you've gone in and met them, they know you, they know the caliber of person you are, and you're staying in touch with them. You'll get Don't forget they're there to work for you, and they're going to work with the candidates that are most likely to be successful in getting the roles that they're promoting. Okay, because what do they want? What are they? They're salespeople.
Yeah,
They've got targets to meet, and they're going to get a commission. So if you can demonstrate that you're one of the better candidates, and you're keen and you're motivated, and you're taking all these extra steps to stay in touch, to follow up, etc., um, you know, they're going to want to work with you. So you've got to do that. You can't just send it off and wait for them to contact you,
and
because they're
to
not busy.
and
They
to
might see your CV for a couple of weeks.
uh, but then also to remember that um, recruitment agencies, um, they are commission driven nowadays, so
And
they
that's what
have
you've
no
got to
interest.
tap into.
There is a tradition. Traditionally, an agency was out there to get you to find you a job. You signed on with them, they would be looking to find you a job. But actually, these days, all they're interested in is getting a fee from that company. They don't really care. So
I think their
a lot of the
sector,
work
it was a
is
lot easier possibly in the past. I'm not never been a recruitment agent, but I guess possibly it was a lot easier because there were a lot more job roles at some
yes.
stage when things were normal. And now
Back in the 90s, you mean? Yes.
roles. Yeah, I mean, I read somewhere there was some kind of strange job that you kind of laugh at when you saw it, but they had 2 or 3 thousand applications for this one particular job, and I can't remember what it was. You know that that's how much demand there was for it. So let's say me and you are in competition for this job with another 4 or 5 thousand people. We've got no chance unless we do these extra steps, um, and get
Well,
ahead of the queue.
that there was that one. That there was certainly was that example in 2014 in Nottingham. I think it was 14 when Starbucks opened, and
That might have been the particular job.
and don't quote me on the figures because I can't remember, but
It was thousands
yeah,
or
it could have
hundreds.
been 10 or 20,000 people that applied for that job, and that included graduates and people that had spent a number of years in higher level
You know what? You've
roles.
just said something really interesting. To adapt your CV to fit the job that you're applying for, if that makes sense.
Yes, which is what we try to do.
Graduate, and you've got all this academic knowledge behind you. That doesn't matter if you're applying to be a barista at Costa Coffee or whatever. It doesn't matter. That will actually put people off. So what you want to do is you want to adapt your CV so it's specific for the role. Hey, during the summer holidays, I worked in a cafe, and this is the experience that I got dealing with customers. They're not interested in finding out that you've got a degree in sociology or whatever, or in law. And I think that's where people go wrong. They put all that down. Yep, just graduated. This is what I've done. Forget all that. I would put down, You know what? When I was younger, I worked in a cafe and I did a similar role to this, customer facing, blah, blah, blah. I'm on my feet, being organized, being friendly. So that's how I would adapt it. I wouldn't necessarily put down the fact that I've got a degree in XYZ
But
because
then,
you automatically, that's going to get your CV thrown in the bin straight away.
although in certain types of customer facing role, and I'm kind of saying this off the record, the young and the beautiful, then it certainly always has been a problem. So if you're going for certain bar roles in certain upmarket bars that want to
I've got
attract a
no
certain
chance, mate.
client, and certainly in Starbucks that they you often find that they are young people. So
I'm beautiful.
you're beautiful,
I'm
yeah,
young, but I am beautiful.
yeah.
So my mum tells me.
But so your mama loves you, yeah. But yeah. I mean, for people like us, I mean, there are certain groups and movements that are
Yeah, I know what you
fighting
mean.
hard
But
to against this. But we as older people, in our certainly our middle aged, we have to remember the ageism. I mean, and
yeah,
it's
yeah. I
rife.
mean,
It's
again,
rife in companies,
yeah.
and it's not being addressed. And in fact, actually, um, there are recruiters that flout the whole
But
thing.
that's the thing. You'll never know. You'll never know. I mean, yeah, I know what you're thinking. Sometimes if you've got a strange sounding name or a foreign sounding name, and you send in your CV off and never hearing back, and you're not quite sure whether it's the name that's put them off, but there's no way to prove it. That's the unfortunate thing about it, and hence the reason again I would always develop that relationship with the person. If it's a recruiter, I would ring them up, I would talk to them, I'd go in and see them, I would send them my CV, and I would follow up with them
Yes,
because then perhaps they can get over there or look beyond their prejudices because they think, okay, this guy's, I've met him, I've spoken to him, his CV looks decent, he comes across well, he's polite, dressed well, looks professional, got the right experience. So it's unfortunate, but sometimes that's what you have to do to overcome
but also just as
bias that you think is there. And
but
I don't know whether I've experienced it, but I felt sometimes that this may have been the case. But I'm not going to play that because I've got no evidence.
yeah, which is always
And
a hard one.
in case, you know what, you move on elsewhere.
I mean, what one of those things about the name thing is that obviously, if you contact the recruiter and you speak to them, I suppose one of the best and worst situations is when you're Sri Lankan, because their names are actually very difficult to pronounce. The tenses on letters and words are different, and they're also very long. So automatically, some people seem to have a negative impression, which is
Yeah.
bonkers considering the fact that um, people from the Indian Ocean have been living in Britain, well, for centuries, but certainly the bulk have been coming in since the
Yeah.
1950s.
Yeah. It's
So,
an
so
interesting point. Yeah.
you shouldn't have those things. But talking to the agency and saying, oh, I'm such and such. I was born in Coventry or
But
or,
you're
or, or
right. You shouldn't be
Bedley.
judged on your name or the color of your skin.
but
But
but it's making that contact can
yeah.
actually destroy
Yeah.
that myth.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, he speaks
Totally.
perfect English, or the guy that's coming over speaks very good English and has the right qualifications. Right, kill that name bias right there, which frankly
Yep.
is completely crap and stupid that it even exists. Um, but yes, there are biases, but there are much worse biases that are going on right now.
Totally. And if that's the case, you'd rather not work for those kind of companies or those kind of
Like with
roles.
the quota biases. I mean, it's now being reported that we are now having affirmative action coming into play in this country, which we avoided, um, and we were making progress in better ways. But now we just seem to be going down that route, and it means that you're turning one potential racism into another. on the opposite ends of the spectrum. So yeah, I mean, what I'm just trying to say is that there are barriers out there for lots of people, white, Asian, black, um,
Totally agree.
and certainly
And it's a shame. It's a shame that people aren't judged upon their experiences and their abilities.
yeah,
They have to be
exactly.
judged upon, the type of name they have, or the schools they went to, or the colour of their skin. But anyway, that's a topic for another video.
It
We
is
divert.
indeed. It is indeed.
So
It's a much more in depth one.
this
That
has been a good one. I think we've covered off most of the points, but it's based upon personal experience, the way that I've gone about doing things, and the way you've gone about doing things as well.
I think
Been a good one.
it has been a good one, and I certainly think that that we may revisit these things in other videos. Well, actually, we are
Totally.
because
Yeah.
this is not because this video was just to help people. It's not exactly what we are
And
about.
if you are watching still, then please like and subscribe. We're a new channel, and we'd love any support that you can give us. And I think when you click on the thumbs up button or the like button, it tells the Google or YouTube algorithm that people like this type of content, and it helps us out as well because it gets us more views and helps us grow our channel. Thank you
But
very much.
but also just on a parting note, as the fighting bulldogs that um, we are going to be talking about a number of issues, political and so forth. So if there are
Just
any
everything related to Britain and
and
our personal interests.
our personal interests as a nation, as a people, so please leave comments behind about anything you'd like us to talk about. And
Yeah,
if
that's
we've
great.
missed anything in this video that you think that needs
Yeah,
to be that needs to be added about interview techniques and things like that, please write something in there because we're just trying to get help out there to people, and all help is good. All positive notes are always good. So
thank you very much.
thank you for joining us.
Until the next one.
Which will be coming very soon.